Hey everybody, this is going to be a relatively quick and impromptu video on market segmentation. So in 2019, what was the number one gaming device? A Wii, a PlayStation, an Xbox, or a Switch? Well, it was a Switch. How come? People wanted to go mobile with their gaming. None of the other platforms offered that. What group of gamers is larger than teen boys? Hard to believe, but it's women over 50. Yes, they're playing games on their phones, Candy Crush and etc. So the phone is actually the number one gaming device in the USA. Some other facts on video game playing. Average gamer is now 34 years old, increasing. More and more people going down from pre-teen to older people. 70% of the gamers are age 18 or older. 45% of gamers are women. Over half play daily. And parents believe that video games have a positive influence on their children's lives, which is a really interesting statistic. Strategy, all right, communication, problem solving, those are some of the things. But also perhaps parents, because their kids play games a lot, want to believe there's something beneficial in it. I don't know. Okay, Coca-Cola. We're going to look at the first four types. Regular Coke, traditional Coke, Coke Classic, Stevia, which is a low-calorie soda made with stevia, which is a natural sugar substitute. Coke Zero, Diet Coke. So why did they come out with three types of Diet Cokes? All right, or low calorie, I should say. Because originally they had Diet Cola, Diet Coke. It's number one. All right? So Coke Zero is guys. All right? Guys don't like to eat or drink things that say diet on it. But Coke Zero's doesn't say that. And Stevia, all right, for people who want things that are all natural. And there is some research that shows that the artificial sweeteners aren't particularly good for you. Bud Light, Bud Light Platinum, Bud Light Lime, Bud Light Radler. That has grapefruit juice. So, why so many types of Budweiser? Because people want different things. All right, take Bud Light. Bud Light Platinum. I guess there's a better brand or version of Bud Light. Bud Light Lime, that's a Corona fighter. All right, Bud Light Radler, grapefruit juice. I was unfamiliar with it until I came up with this graphic. Now, who's Bud Light Seltzer for? Largely women. Guys, one segment, guys tend to drink beer. Women do drink beer, but they tend to drink other drinks, especially social drinks like wine or seltzer or mixed drinks instead. So, market segmentation and targeting. It's really the first two parts of STP, all right, which is known as segmentation, targeting, and positioning and marketing. And that's the basic marketing strategy. We will talk about positioning another time. Okay, so market segmentation, kind of what it sounds like. Dividing a market into smaller segments. Each segment's better served with a unique marketing strategy. Different strokes for different folks. So, I talked with a brand manager from Activision, for Call of Duty, and they use different promotions based on game modes. Different types of promotions for people who play solo, in team, zombie mode. Different types of promotions were more effective with different groups. You can have one brand and it can appeal to different groups for different reasons. So Tesla, especially initially, it was green, the first kind of major EV on the road. Not the first, but the first one to be successful. Status, it was expensive. All right, so I can afford to be green, but look at me. I got a $100,000 car and $80,000 car. And then it's fast. So you may not care that much about it's green or it's electric or status, but it's really fast. Faster than almost every gas car. So, different reasons why people like Tesla. So, Segmentation. What's the idea? That I do a better job serving, a smaller group's needs. I'm going to provide greater value compared to competition. I'll make more profit, either because I can charge more because I have more value, or I'm going to sell more units and therefore I'll have more revenue and greater profit through volume. Other benefit, because we're really figuring in and narrowing down who we're going to market to, we can do a better job with our resources. We're more effective and more efficient. And oftentimes in the process of looking at market segmentation and going through that process, we find new markets. Under Armour, football player from the University of Maryland, needed cold gear. Nobody made it. Cotton wasn't good. Absorbs water, then you freeze. All right? Wool, too itchy. eBay, e-commerce, all right, auction site. There are some others. They're the first. They're the daddy. They're a very large all e-commerce business. Airbnb, we all know about them. And Uber, HelloFresh. Blue Apron was the first in meal kits, but HelloFresh was right there also. So new markets by looking at how can we segment markets. What are we looking for? What's the ideal market segment? We want to find a group of people whose needs aren't being met or are being poorly met. And many times those include what people might term latent needs or latent wants. In that nobody was asking for a cell phone. Nobody was really asking for a smartphone. All right? But, the first couple of companies developed it, and all of a sudden it really took off. So a lot of times it's things that we don't know we want. All right? And then that market where, nobody's really doing a good job meeting their needs or their potential future needs, it has to be large enough so we can reach the financial goals that we have. So those are the two things we're looking for. It's kind of like prospecting for gold in a pan or sifting through, all the rocks and everything, and you're looking for a big nugget of gold where, hey, that's what a segment is that is ideal. There's a whole bunch of people who want to buy something. Nobody's doing a good job meeting their needs. And, it's big enough to reach our goals. That's when Nintendo found with Wii. A whole bunch of parents wanted to buy video games for their kids because they were getting probably pestered to death. But they didn't want violent games. And they probably wanted to be able to play with them. And Nintendo Wii enabled the kids to play non-violent games and to allow parents and grandparents to play along with them and for family fun. So here's a whole bunch of examples. You can read through this and stop it, but they're all kind of found new market segments. Right off the bat, ESPN. Sure, there was sports on TV, right? But for people who, really wanted to get the latest sports information, see lots of different things and stuff, ESPN pioneered it. There's still nobody really can challenge them, right? And they've stayed in their lane. They really only feature sports. But anyway, you can look at that list and go through it. So, how do we do segmentation? Well, there's really 4 steps, even though I have 3. I have a double number 1. So first we have to find a base or basis of segmentation. How can we take this bigger market and divide it up, chop it up, segment it like an orange segment. And then once we have chopped it up in ways we think might make sense, we want to understand who are these people. Right? What do they like to buy? How much money do they make? What can we tell about them? Right? And then we're going to look at the various segments we have and build a profile for and say, hey, how attractive are they for us to go into that business? Right? So we're going to kind of rate them, evaluate them. And then finally, we're going to figure out if we decide to go into that market, what our options are for what segments we want to target. So those are really the 4 steps. So, first we're going to look at basis of segmentation, and that just means, hey, we're going to find a way to segment the market. It's just the term that's used in the marketing literature for a long time. So, here we have deodorants, Dove for men, Dove Men Plus Care, Secret, Degree Men, Dove Advanced Care, Secret Clinical Strength, Old Spice High Endurance, Old Spice Suave, Secret Outlast. So how is this market segmented? Well, Dove, Secret Outlast. Those are deodorants typically used by women. Dove Men Plus Care, Degree Men, Old Spice High Endurance, Old Spice. All right, those are used by guys. All right, so Suave, probably price. Relatively inexpensive, not marketed by gender, but gender is the main way, not the only way, right? But the main way, right? And what's the real difference in the brands? Not the ingredients. Fragrance, right? Brand name, sometimes application, but that's really it. So gender is just, you can see this. This is Dr. Squatch. So gender is really just demographics. So one way to segment markets is by demographics, and we've already talked about this, so we don't really need to spend a lot of time on this. But there's lots of different ways to do it by demographics. Okay, and it's the same stuff. Levi's has signature jeans, and I think they have another one. Those are sold at Walmart and Target. They have their regular Levi's, which are sold in their own stores, online, Kohl's, department stores, and then they have their own special vintage series Levi jeans, $250. Different segments. Okay, geography is another one. All right, so take a breakfast cereal. Popeyes wants a breakfast cereal. So any breakfast, I'm not cereal, I'm sorry, breakfast meal. Sorry about that. You have to have some type of egg sandwich, some kind of potatoes, coffee, maybe a pancake or a waffle, okay, a pancake, maple syrup, and juice. But what would you need down south? Well, you'd need probably grits and chicken, would make sense for Popeyes, right? Chicken and waffles, okay, gravy and biscuits. What would you need in, Western Texas, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, Southern California, Nevada? Well, you'd probably have to include Tex-Mex, right? So you'd have breakfast burritos and other types of, Mexican breakfast foods and spices and sauces. And up north in Northern California and Oregon and Seattle and so forth, you probably need more healthy foods. Quinoa, kiwis, yogurt, a whole, all stuff that's all grown organically. That would probably do really well. Midwest. Well, the Midwest is, you get the cheeseheads who are the fans for Green Bay because it's all dairy and meat. All right, cattle. That's where all the slaughterhouses used to be. So, it's how many different breakfast sausages and steak and cheeses do you have, and eggs, right? Everything that's going to give you a heart attack and kill you. Tastes great, but that's what you have in the Midwest. Northeast, it used to be bagels, but bagels have kind of become a national thing now. But, different parts of the country, geographically. Look at winter clothing, Subaru. Probably more Subaru dealerships in the northern half of the country and the Northeast, all right, than there are down south. Because who needs a car with all-wheel drive if you don't have snow or bad weather and so forth? And so when you think about population, remember it's also population density. Urban, rural, suburban. Okay, so those we've kind of talked about already in other classes. So the next base, right, our third base is this idea of psychographics. And that's taking like kind of psychology and graphics to measure things and combining them. And really it can be anything that, a person thinks has a trait, psychological trait, their motives. I mean, we're going to focus on lifestyle. But the reason that lifestyle is so popular is especially back in the day, before e-commerce and digital, there are products that based on people's personality and other things and motives and things like that it's real segments there. So people who are aggressive, not aggressive, okay, people who are introverted and extroverted, they want and buy different things. The hard part used to be then, how can you identify them? How can you find them? E-commerce, websites, email, all that kind of stuff, a lot easier nowadays. But anyway, we're going to focus on lifestyle because I think that is one of the most common and one of the most useful. And so we have to kind of think about what is a lifestyle. Most definitions of lifestyle are like the modes or patterns in which you lead your life, which doesn't tell you anything. It's not very illuminating, and so forth. So I like to think about it as how we spend our resources. In other words, it's the choices that we make with our time, money, and effort. How do we spend our time doing that? And definitely, you can measure this stuff with people's attitudes, their interests, and their opinions on important things. And the thing to remember is you don't necessarily need to have a understanding of the lifestyles of the whole U.S., but how people, the lifestyles of people who either use your type of product that you're marketing or don't use. That's really what you want to focus on. And so we'll work through a quick example, and let's take college students at AIC, which is no different than most colleges. All right, so there are probably 4 lifestyles, and I'm going to go through them quickly. So the first one is probably athletes. We have a lot of athletes. Close to 50% of the students are athletes. And what makes them different in terms of their time, money, and effort? Well, they don't have a lot of time, right? They're really committed to their sport. They put in a lot of effort, physical and emotional effort. It's really important to them, right? They have to practice off season and in season, bus rides, study halls. So time is an issue. Getting food is an issue if there's a late practice or a late game and the dining hall is closed. That's one group. Another group would be academics. People who are most focused upon how they're doing in school, their GPA, because they want to make sure that they can get into the best graduate school or they want to get the best job they can. And so they spend a lot more time in the library or other ways to study and probably come to class more often. And they have relatively more free time. And then what's another group? Well, there's a social group, right? So part of that is, students who party a lot and don't go to class as much and don't study as much. That's where they put their time, money, and effort. But another group of that in the social part is people who get real involved in the different social organizations and opportunities to socialize on campus. So student government, fraternities, honor societies, sororities, and so forth. And, for many people, this is their first time away from home, away from all the people who know them, right? So they can act how they want. So they do. And college is a really important part of people growing up socially and gaining more experience. And then the last one would be commuters. So what's a commuter? A commuter isn't somebody who just happens to live off campus. A commuter is somebody whose life kind of revolves, around their life outside of AIC. Most students who live on campus or live nearby, all right, but come here for 9 months out of the year, during when they're here, AIC is the center of their universe. Most people who commute have another life, right? They either live at home, they have their own place, they could be married, they have a partner, they're probably working, and so forth. And so they come to school to go to class, and then pretty much when classes are over, they go back to their life. So going to school is kind of more like a job, and so forth. So those might be our 4 lifestyles. And then let's say we had $2 million, or the school had $2 million, and the president wanted to make the school more attractive to incoming students and make existing students more satisfied. So what could they do with the money? Is there one thing that would satisfy all the different lifestyles we just named, those 4? Probably not, because athletes would want better facilities, right? More trips, to fun places in the off season, right? Better uniforms, more money, right? Places to eat, better arrangements for when, they get out too late for the dining hall. Academic people, right? Better technology in the classrooms, better professors, all right? More career-oriented guidance, maybe a mentor, more internships, help with the graduate school applications, and so forth. Social people, more money for organizations. There's a lot of potential in this area, but the problem is there a shuttle that takes you to downtown Springfield, picks you up in the evening? Right? Is there any alliances with other schools to share kind of social events? Have we had major comedians or musicians or singers on campus? So that's all part of, more money for trips, right, from student government and from AIC. So those are all part of the social. Commuters, what would they want? Maybe some classes off campus, maybe more online classes, more parking, better lighting, reduction in tuition costs because they don't take advantage of all the other opportunities at AIC to do things. So you can see that $2 million, even though it seems like a lot of money, there isn't one thing you could do that would really make everybody happy. So that's the idea of lifestyles, and it's really, really common, and so forth. Like we said, hey, the Tesla. Some people are really into the environment and climate change and doing all that. Other people, it's status and that, and the other people, it was, hey, I'm just really interested in performance. So if you think about how you spend your money on and time and effort on important things, you'll see there are other lifestyles. Take vacationing. A lot of people go to resorts. Some people like to do cruises. Some people like to camp, right? Yeah. They might be in an RV that costs $75,000. They might have a nice truck or vehicle to pull a $35,000 or $50,000 camper, right? Some people like to go places and do Airbnb, not because it's necessarily more economical, because they can pick in where they live and they can really kind of immerse themselves in the culture without having the whole resort or hotel thing in the way. So it isn't always about money. It's about what people want to do with it, how they spend their time, their money, and their effort. So there are national lifestyles available from a couple companies that do that. But I think they're way too general, and obviously they're around, so they make money and they work with companies. But I think you should really look at, hey, whatever it is that you're marketing, if it's gas grills, right? Look at the different lifestyles, the types of what people do with them, right? A gas grill can be anywhere from a couple $100 to $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. It's not just how much money people make. It's what's their attitude to entertainment, having people over. How often do they do it? How do they like to cook it? Do they cook it? Do they use a smoker? Is it a big deal for them, the guy, to be the grill master and cook all that stuff and have all this stuff? It may not be too much in the kitchen, but get him outside in a grill and he's going to do a lot. And then other people, it's not important, right? I mean, it works, it's fine, but it's not part of their identity, or it's not important to them in terms of their how they feel about who they are and expressing themselves. So it can really vary. That's my point. But look at it as it relates to the product or service that you're marketing. Okay. So next one is behavioral segmentation. All right. So we're going to look at people's behavior, how they act, and try to find a way to segment markets based upon their behavior. And you can think about beer, but I'm going to leave those links to you. The Miller Lite ad. It's a very old ad and stuff, but most people should be able to recognize, especially guys, or should be able to recognize who the narrator of the ad is. And we're going to go right to the main point. So this is about usage rate. All right, and it's called the Pareto principle. And it basically says oftentimes there are heavy users, people who buy a lot of the product, and there's light users, people who don't play that often. So my two boys, they're not boys anymore, they're grown men, but one plays video games a lot. The other one probably plays more video games now than he ever did. It wasn't that important to him. So they're heavy users and light users. And there's this thing called the 80-20 rule. And so it holds a lot of times, right? So 80% of your sales come from 20% of your customers. Those are the heavy users. So there's a group that buys a lot, all right, or uses it a lot. There's a group of people that go to Disney all the time. Okay, it may not be 80% of Disney sales, but there are people who go to Disney all the time. All right, and then the other part is there's light users, okay, or even non-users. 80% of your customers only account for 20% of your sales. Right? If you take something like beer, I'm in the 20% of your sales come from 80%. I'm a light user of beer. Only time I really drink beer is I'm drinking somebody else's beer. And there's no other beer, bourbon or wine around. Right? So, but I do buy beer, right? When we have people coming over. And so, what's important to me is the brand. So I get a brand that's socially acceptable. All right? If I was a heavy user of beer, all right, and I'm just kind of guessing because I never was, but, different types of promotions, bonus packs, all right? I buy a case of beer and I get extra 6-pack out of this. Maybe some, silly giveaways and sweepstakes might be of interest to me, but how you market to heavy users is really different than light users. So heavy users, oftentimes you want to you got to make sure, let me go to the next one here, all right? Your heavy users are the ones that pay your bills. So they're the ones that buy a lot. They're small, but they buy most of your product. And so you have to make sure you take care of them. Light users, they have potential perhaps, but if you can't realize that potential, you can't get them to buy more, they're not as important, right? So new technology, new social trends and stuff often unlock, increased sales from light users. So again, Nintendo Wii is a good example. There was a whole bunch of parents who didn't want their kids to play video games. They were non-users, so they wouldn't buy a console for their kids. All right? And then Nintendo with the Wii came out with non-violent games, and they had, devices where you didn't have to be good with using a keypad, okay, and your thumbs and everything like that, and they could play with their kids, right? Instead of playing board games, they could do bowling or tennis or different games and so forth. And, they zoomed up in sales for a while. The year they launched it, they outsold the PlayStation and Xbox, right? They sold so many, they had to put a quota on how much it would be sold in the U.S. Does we sell a lot as much now? No, they don't. All right. Well, their competitors can do what they do now, pretty much, and Nintendo's okay with that, really, because they're really a software gaming company. Macy's had 5% of their customers account for 50% of their sales. Right? They totally revamped the rewards program to make sure they keep that 5%. Not to get more people in, but make sure they don't lose any of that 5%, especially during the pandemic and before that, with decreasing, number of shoppers at malls, because they lose any little bit from that 5%, it's going to really hurt them. So you need programs to try to convert light users or non-users, and you need programs to make sure that your heavy users are happy and feel a priority. Just now, Delta changed their reward programs for their airlines and upped the requirements for people to get like elite status and whatever they get from that. Well, there was a lot of blowback from that, and they had to go back and change it, and the CEO had to say, I guess we tried to do too much too soon, because you can't afford to lose your top customers. Okay, so more examples. All right, 80% of the tweets back in the day came from 10% of the accounts. I don't know what's going on with X now, formerly Twitter, but probably still true. So there's a bunch of people who tweet and a bunch of people who read. Now, and then online behavioral audience segmentation just means we've all bought stuff or looked at different brands online and products, and then we see them in the ads. So they're just, again, behavioral segmentation. They're saying, hey, we're going to focus our money on people who've looked at our products online, and then buy advertising space when they go to different websites that are selling advertising space. And it's all done through, an auction program and sharing information so they can recognize us shoppers as numbers, right? And what we've looked at, and then send automatic bids to the different websites when we show up there and they get a match. Okay, last one. Okay, so we have toothpaste, right? Couldn't find anything newer, right? Like this is from Statistica, right? Crest 3D White, number one. Sensodyne Pronamel. Colgate Optic White. Sensodyne. Colgate. Colgate Total. Crest. Colgate Max Fresh. Crest Pro Health Advanced. Crest Pro Health. How is this market segmented? You should be able to figure it out by the brand names. Crest 3D White, Colgate Optic White, Colgate Max Fresh. What do they have in common? People, what do they want from their toothpaste? They all have fluoride, all of these brands here. So it's not cavity prevention. That's not what's driving this. It's they want white teeth. They want fresh breath. It's social. They want, social benefits from their toothpaste. So they have a nice smile. They don't offend people. People don't talk behind their back about how yellow their teeth are or how bad their breath is. Then we have Sensodyne Pronamel, right? Stops sensitive teeth, and Pronamel protects your enamel and enamel erosion, right? Which they make a big deal out of. Sensodyne, okay. Colgate Total Care, Crest Pro Health Advanced, Crest Pro Health. Toothpaste is kind of seen as a medicine, all right, medicinal qualities, either to make your teeth stronger, more likely to last, and also so your dentist trips are more pleasant, or I should say not as painful, all right? You don't have to get cavities, crowns, root canals. When the hygienist cleans your teeth, it's not as painful, there's not blood everywhere, and so forth. So people, it's a way to make their teeth better, stronger, more healthy, not social. And then Colgate and Crest, which basically just have fluoride in them, all right, is probably price, right? So one group wants social benefits, another group wants medicinal benefits, another group wants price, right? So three different sets of benefits. So we call this, all right, these are the different brands here, okay, benefit sought. That's the key idea down here, that we segment the market by the different types of benefits that people want. And this is kind of a duh idea, all right? And we could say that all markets are segmented this way, and it's true. And this is especially true for business-to-business marketing, all right? But the issue is sometimes it's hard to identify who are those people, and it's easier to identify them, all right, for marketing communications and branding, by demographics, geography, lifestyle, behavior in some way or some combination of those segmentation variables than by benefit sought. And, we have price, performance, convenience, relationship. We can say, hey, there's, that's different ways to market things, all right, in terms of benefits. Now, when we do segmentation, I've kind of presented one segmentation base after another, but really it's kind of like trying to find a search for something at a big, online, retailer for a certain product, right? We have to look, I'm looking for clothes, it's men, all right, it's in jackets, I want a leather jacket, motorcycle style, and in XL, right? So companies use multiple bases of segmentation to narrow down the search, because really, again, what we're looking for is a group of people whose needs aren't being met, all right, or not being met very well, or their needs they don't even wants they don't realize they have yet, okay, that's big enough so we can make the profit and revenue that we want, All right, so we use multiple bases of segmentation. All right, some combination. Now, once we've kind of identified a market and chopped it up into different segments, all right, we're going to we need to figure out who's in those segments. So we're going to develop a profile. Who, what, how, when, what, why, whatever. I think I got them all. I got 2 hows in there. Oops. Okay, so anyway, and what's become really popular is the idea of creating a persona. And a persona is a hypothetical fictional person, like a character in a book or a movie, of your ideal customer or who represents that segment. And here's one for a woman named Brandy who's got narrow feet, so this is for shoes. And she's a female, and she's a receptionist. She lives in LA, and it talks about her motivations for shoes, and what her goals are, what she gets frustrated, what her pain points are, what's hard, the friction in buying shoes, and all that kind of stuff. And so, companies do this now. This really came out of digital marketing because, in traditional on-ground marketing, if you were in marketing and you wanted to see what your customers are like, you go to the stores where your product's being sold and just observe them. But you don't really observe people online. You don't get to see what they're like, their age necessarily, and all that other information. So developing a persona gives marketers a more holistic, complete view of their customers and enables them to do a better job as seeing the world through their eyes and walking in their shoes, so to speak, so they can make better marketing decisions. And the other benefit is, and here are some more examples, is that other departments within the company or groups that interact with customers, customer support, research and development, some helping with marketing channels and so forth. You can share your personas with them so they have a better understanding of who the customer is and why they might be reacting in a certain way. But they have to be accurate, and you have to keep them updated. So let me click. So now we know we have a segment, ways to segment the market. We know who's in them. Now we have to figure out how attractive are these different groups. I mean, does it make sense? Any of these? Should we consider some of them, all of them, none of them, and so forth? And so the way we're going to do this is we're going to look at these 5 criteria, which are pretty universal. All right. So when we look at the segment, we say, hey, can we measure them? Do we know how big it is? Okay. Not so much an issue these days with digital marketing, but still, can we count them? All right. Are there enough of them? All right. Is it worth it? Can we get enough business out of it so it's worth the investment? Okay. And will it, potentially last over time, even though there are no guarantees with the rate of change these days? Can we reach them easily? This used to be a bigger issue before e-commerce. Right, on ground, right, television, only newspaper ads, magazine ads, much harder. Okay, right, can't get the same coverage. Nowadays, that's not so much an issue, but still, you got to be able to reach people. You got to get to their social media. You got to get them to click on your stuff. All right, so still an issue. Differentiable. Are the segments really that different at this point in time in some meaningful way? And we can always find differences. And statistically, if we do some type of analysis, if we have lots of subjects on the analysis, we'll find significant differences statistically. But it may not be much of a difference in real life. So that's what we need to look at. And finally, is it actionable? Meaning, hey, there might be a good opportunity, but do we have the tools, the experience, the resources to take advantage of it? Right, it's like in sports, you're playing against an opponent, you might see their weakness, and you might be able to do something like they're not very quick, and so you could press them all over the court in basketball, but you're not very good at defense. So if you're not very good at defense and you're going to press them all over the court, it's probably a bad strategy because you can't do it. So if you're going to do something like that, you have your strategy, your actionability has to include how you're going to get good at it. Now, so you've evaluated all these segments, and now we're going to maybe go after a couple of them. We have really 3 strategies, and so that's targeting. Now I'm going to target these different markets, segments, and I don't really think they're strategies. I think they're more just a description of what you can do. All right, it makes sense, but we're going to work through them because you'll, get them once you're out of here and you're talking to other people in marketing and in business. So I have a graph here. Okay, so on the vertical axis is price. The higher you go up, the higher the price, and on the horizontal axis, the further you go to the right, as you look at it, the higher the quality. The circles here represent potential segments. And so the upper left segment, right, is high price, low quality. The people are willing to pay a high price, right? And they don't want low quality, but you can give them low quality. Probably as long as your price is high, because, hey, a higher price, right? Well, it's got to be a better quality. Or you have a brand name, all right, that has a good reputation. Well, it's going to be good. The lower left corner, right, that's low price, low quality. People, they just want something. It's not important how great it is. It just needs to work, and they don't want to pay a lot for it, right? Where are they going to shop? Dollar store, Walmart, Target, mass merchandisers, and so forth. All right. Then as we move to the right, so we'll go to the upper right-hand quadrant, high price, higher quality. So these type of customers want better quality. They want it to work well, all right, and they're willing to pay for it. All right. So they're going to buy the more expensive things, but they want more benefits, more features and benefits than any of the other ones, except for the ones right below them, the low price and higher quality. So these people, they don't want to pay much for it, right? That's why they're low on that bottom kind of row, but they want high quality. Okay. I'm not sure they're really an attractive segment just by that, right? Because they want lots of stuff, but they don't want to pay very much for it. Okay. So now, this is a brand new market, let's say. And these are the 4 segments. And the dotted marks where they kind of intersect here and here, those represent kind of the ideal points, the center of those segments, what people want, and so forth. So you're going to be, or if I was going to be the first brand to go in here, what would I do? I'm going to launch a brand, all right, on this graph here. I'm going to position it, relative to these segments here. So if there's no other competitors and the segments are really close together, I might say, you know what? These things really aren't that differentiable. Look at the circle. I can draw a circle right around here, and I kind of get one segment. And so, I'm going to put my brand right here in the middle. All right? And I have no competition. And what's going to happen? I'm going to get sales from there. I'm going to get sales from there and there and there. That looks pretty good. So that's known as an undifferentiated strategy. So we look at the differences and we say, hey, you know what? They're not that great. So I'm going to come with one brand, one size fits all. That's it. I'm not going to make lots of different brands, okay? Or, do any kind of multiple brands with different benefits. I'm just making one thing. All right? And so one size fits all. Right? Hard to find. I'm going to have Prel shampoo here. Like I saw an ad for them, and it's like, it's just shampoo. That's it. All right? Not a market leader. It's a hard strategy to pull off. When's it likely to occur? Well, when people see brands as commodities, right? There's no difference. If you don't think there's any differences in the green beans and when you go to buy frozen green beans at the store, or brands of milk, do you think there's any difference when you buy, if you're buying milk for your kids, do you worry about whether it's Hood or Stop and Shop brand or a local dairy, or do you just buy the cheapest milk you can find, the whole milk or the 2%? Right? New products, are in the marketplace, and hey, it's new, so they're not even sure if they could have lots of different brands, but they're not sure if they're going to be successful or not. So they really don't launch a lot, right? Or if people's tastes are all over the place, right? There's no circles. There's just dots all over the place. Hey, where's the best place to go? You might only put one brand in, right? And see what happens, all right? So what's the advantage? Hey, you're making one brand, you have one set of marketing communication. If you're successful and you're the first, especially, you can you're going to make a lot. So that experience curve and the production concept, your costs go down, economies of scale, all right, and everything. You're the first one in the marketplace, so you can do really well. All right. What's the risk? Well, we'll see in a minute, right? But as we said in the production concept, price isn't always the most important thing to people. There are other benefits, or whatever your main benefit is in the undifferentiated strategy. Marketers are going to introduce additional benefits. So, a couple of years later, the market's still kind of the same. There's only one brand there, the one size fits all star. But now you can see the circles representing the segments are much further apart. So the original kind of circle we drew was kind of like this. But now it would be much bigger. And now a new company is considering this market. And so they're going to look at them and go, well, if I go right next to the star, I have to compete directly with them, and they've been around a lot longer, and their costs are lower because they've been doing this a while. That doesn't make much sense. So, what would they probably do if they were smart? There we go. Whoops, it was a little delay there. Okay, but they could use what we call a multi-segment approach. It's also called differentiated back in the day. Right, so it's different strokes for different folks, right? So they're going to launch, unique strategies. For, in this case, I would do 3 out of the 4 segments, right? I would come up with a high-end product, right, for the high price, high quality. I'd come up with, maybe have a different brand name, or sell it in different stores where people think they're going to get high price but not really have great quality, so I could have a really high profit margin, right? I might not sell a lot of them, right, but and then I would come up with a inexpensive brand, right? And I could give the same brand name. It could be premium, regular and economy or something like that, however I wanted to do it. But now look what happens, right? Remember, the center of each circle is what people want, all right? And so if you're a customer in this circle, the green is closest. You're a customer in this circle, the green is closest to what you want. If you're in this circle, this green is still closest to what you want. So now this competitor who is getting all the sales almost gets no sales. So, strategically, the major point is being in the middle is a bad place to be usually, because marketers are going to come in, different brands are going to come in and target different groups, right? And create, new segments. You actually will create segments by offering different sets of benefits. And pretty soon you can end up with not really much of a market. Now, benefits of multi-segment strategy, all right? All right. Oh, when does it happen? Okay, I'm sorry. Hey, as markets grow, people gain experience, especially if it started off as a new type of product, right? Hey, so Under Armour dominated performance gear. They still do really well, but think of how many other companies sell it. And they're having a really tough time with women, all right? And that's kind of morphed into leggings. And so Lululemon, Athleta, they kill it with women, not Under Armour. Maybe it's just for some athletes, but in other stuff, they're short. Shoes, has Under Armour been able to make a dent into Nike or even Adidas? No. All right? Okay? So as customers gain experience, right, with, performance gear and that kind of stuff and athletic gear, you have to keep changing. Right, you have to, make stuff for, in this case for Under Armour, for women, for the exact activities they do, right? Because Lululemon started with yoga, and so forth. And so, as consumers gain more experience with products, they find new needs and new benefits that they're interested in, and at the same time, marketers are trying to figure out a way. How can we differentiate our brand? How can we, go in there and pick off a segment, create a segment, and so forth. So it's difficult. Now, the last strategy, all right, oops, I'm sorry, jumped the gun. Multi-segment strategy. What's the advantages? Well, you're going after multiple segments with a product tailored right to them, so you should be able to provide more value and earn more profits, right? And, if you do it right, you can reach more customers successfully than other strategies, especially undifferentiated. What's the disadvantage to it? Mainly that, in this our example, tripled our cost, right? Each brand has to stand on its own. Each one often gets its own marketing communications or delivery of marketing communications and so forth. If there's manufacturing differences, and you don't get as much in economies of scale because you have to make changes in every time you manufacture things. So it's more expensive. But as long as you can create more value, it usually pays off. It is pretty much the dominant strategy of most companies. And then the other thing you need to worry about is this idea of cannibalization. So Budweiser, right? If they came out with Bud Light because they found that in social situations, more of their customers were going to Corona, all right, because of its kind of status and everything and acceptance, then that's not a bad move, okay? If they can keep more of their own customers that were leaving, instead of buying Corona, they'll buy Bud Light Lime. And because Corona really, for a while, didn't have a light beer. And if they can attract some Corona buyers, because Bud Light Lime is less expensive, let's say, than Corona, then that's probably a good deal for them. But if the only thing that's happening is that Bud Light buyers who are loyal, are just buying Bud Light Lime for something different, they haven't really gained any new customers. And if they're not drinking it a lot more Bud Light of any type than they were before, they're not getting more sales. So, you have to be careful you don't cannibalize your own brand. So just switching sales from one brand to another when you introduce a new brand usually is not very profitable, right? You usually lose money because you invested money to market the brand, but you haven't gained any bump up in sales or new customers. So you have to be careful you don't overdo it. Okay, so the last one's called niche focused or concentrated. And the most common term is niche, right? And it's from like a biological standpoint, right? Certain organisms have a little environmental niche that they do really well in, and you take them outside of that and then they die. So the idea is that oftentimes there's a smaller segment somewhere that nobody's really serving. And so in this case, that's a bottle of bourbon. And that bottle of bourbon costs $3,500. Surprisingly, but it does. Bourbon's really popular right now. Okay? But you can see that it's a really small segment. Right? So the idea of niche was, and it really developed out of that oftentimes there were smaller segments, or smaller segments could be created, and they were so small that large competitors wouldn't really want to go after them because it's not big enough. And a smaller company could go in there, make the profit they wanted, and also have the funds or the reputation once they got to lock down their customers to defend it. So a bigger company is going to say, hey, look, it's not that big a segment, and people really like that brand. It's going to be hard to get them to switch, permanently. So it's not worth our effort. And that's where really niche came from. I don't really like the term or the idea because, niche is, the same as multi-segment, except we're just going to have to go on one segment. That's it. So multi-segment's 2 or more. All right? So 2 or more brands. This is one brand, or one segment, I should say, not brand. But you're launching 2 or more brands, or two or more strategies, and that's only one strategy for one group. And so they tend to be smaller. But you can be a very successful company with lots of relatively small markets or segments that you dominate in. That's kind of what Dr. Pepper or Snapple Group does. They have like 30 different brands that aren't associated together, but they do well enough on all of them that, they're number 3 behind Coca-Cola and Pepsi. I just don't think that philosophically there's really much of a difference. So you just want to remember that multi-segment, 2 or more, niche, 1 segment, and then but you're still catering to that segment, right? A separate strategy for them. And then undifferentiated is one size fits all, one strategy for everybody. So just to help make things clear, right? Here are some examples. Well, let me go through niche. Sorry about that. What I just said, right? Not a one size fits all. Really no different. All right. And then you do it when you can go after one segment. Usually it's high end or low end or some special characteristic or benefit that people want. So you could argue, like, if you looked at laptops and computers, gaming computers are kind of a niche. Yeah, they're popular, but they're not nearly as popular as, mainstream business laptops, business desktops. Apple doesn't make a gaming computer and so forth, so there's not a MacBook and stuff like that. So that's relatively a niche. And there's a few companies that service that. And there's some companies like, HP, for example, or, they have their own lines of that. So they're going after a niche, even though, they're also multi, segment in the same laptop and desktop thing. So that's why I think it's kind of not the greatest term, but you need to know it because people use it that way. Okay, so examples. All right, undifferentiated are hard to find, especially long-lasting ones. Okay, so is Airbnb undifferentiated in terms of what they do? Yeah, if they don't really go after different types of lodging and time, but if they start doing long-term leases, which I think they do for residences and stuff, that would be a new segment for them. All right, but hey, salt, baking soda, paper clips, brown paper lunch bags, things that are kind of commodities, right? Can anybody name another brand besides Arm and Hammer for baking soda? Anybody name a brand of paper clips? No. All right, so there's probably competitors, but you're just going after one product for everybody. Multi-segment's the most common. All right, car companies, right? They make SUVs, sports cars, trucks, big SUVs, little SUVs, EVs, and so forth. Marriott, by far the largest, owns the most hotels and motels. Red Bull and Monster, and you can click on the link. Red Bull, yeah, they're multi-segment, but they basically have a regular one that has lots of different flavors, kind of like Gatorade. And then they have a zero, I guess for guys, 0 calories, and a diet one or low calorie one. That's it. Monster, on the other hand, right, they really have a lot of segments that they go after. So they have regular Monster with all different flavors. They have Monster Ultra, which must have more caffeine in it, right, with all different flavors. They have Monster Rehab, all right, so I guess if we had a tough night out and stuff like that, again, it's different from the other two, marketed differently. They have all sorts of different stuff there. They have Monster Java, all right, which is going to taste like coffee, be a coffee flavor. And they have Monster Juice. It's a juice-based energy drink. So they have, 5 different kind of, types of products that they sell, all right, to different groups. Banana Republic, Old Navy, Gap, all right, Baby Gap, all owned by Gap. Gap also owns Athleta. So, they've segmented the market, and you decide to use branding-wise, which we'll talk about another time, different brand names. Coca-Cola, Anheuser-Busch, right? Sprint's no longer around, but not almost every, AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile, they all also own pay-as-you-go companies, besides their own, regular services. Niche is a lot easier, right? Ferrari, Cabela's is going to sell outdoor gear, right? LL Bean, Rolex, DLX, right? Clothes for big boys, Victoria's Secret lingerie, HelloFresh meal kits. So, there's quite a few companies that specialize, right? And this would be called a niche. Now, I wouldn't really call Cabela's a niche because it's a pretty big company. LL Bean, it fits the category, all right? But it's a niche. So that's why I think niche is, not the greatest description anymore for a company that decides to go after only one segment with a specialized strategy. But that's only me. Okay, that is it. Thank you very much.